Today I'm going to show you two different ways of recording quality in MineMarket. It's important to note that a sample is for a transaction. So where we have any movement of product, that is a sample, whereas when we do a record quality on a static object, that's called a survey. So today we're going to be looking at composite samples, and we're going to be looking at lot samples. A composite sample is just an average sample that's applied to one or many transactions, whereas a lot sample is a sample taken per specified quantity of tons and applied to one or many transactions. In the next video we'll look at certificates and surveys. On the screen I've got a shipment with 4 holds that have been loaded. So we can see the tons there, and I've applied a composite sample across all the loading transactions. And this is very useful if you have a single customer with a single vessel. A second example would be if you have 2 customers sharing a vessel, and each customer wants their own sample taken. So you can create a composite sample number 1 and apply it to the first 3 holds, and then the second composite sample and apply that to the remaining hold. So when we look at a lot sample, the first thing that we have to decide is at what tonnage do we need to take a sample. So in this example, just to keep things simple, I've said, okay, at every 10,000 tons we'll take a sample. So if we look at the tonnage on the first hold of 23,000 tons, the first sample will be created would be 10,000 tons. Another sample will be created for the next 10,000, and then the balance would then be the first portion of the third sample. The remainder of the sample tonnage for sample number 3 would then be applied to the next, and the next, and the next, etc. till we've finished creating all the lot samples for the vessel. So the quality on hold number 1 would be the sample number 1 quality times the tonnage, sample 2 quality times the tonnage, sample 3 times the tonnage. So let's go into MineMarket and we see how we actually do this in MineMarket. So what you're looking at is you're looking at a screen. We're on the shipment screen, in the logistics tab, on the loading tab. So I've pre-loaded the ship, and what we have here is we see we've got all the holds from number 1 to number 8, the structure of the vessel, and then we have little numbers there where that's the first loading transaction, that's the second loading transaction, third, and then the fourth. When the hold is grey, it just means that the hold is empty. There's no numbers there. You can't see there aren't any transaction numbers in there. And then when you see certain colors, that's just the product color that's been specified. This is very useful to make sure that certain customers don't want to mix products in a vessel, right? So let's go. So I've done the simple single transaction for each of the tonnage in the example. So let's go to the composite sample tab. So the first thing that I need is a sample template, and I would go and create a new sample. At this point I can rename the sample, and I can allocate a sample date. The sample date is just the defaults to today's date. If I need to record results, the date on which the results were requested, I can do that as well. So I can go and record the value of the sample at this point. I can say, yep, it's 3, and then maybe it's 63, 0.11%, etc. And I can fill in the rest of the analytes. So at this point, all I've done is I've just created a sample and I've recorded some sample values for it. At this stage, I haven't linked the sample to any of the transactions. If I want to select all the transactions, then I could just go and select them all. Right, that's it. And that's as simple as it. So that's the first example. So we've got a single composite sample and we've applied it to all the transactions. The second example that we had was where we have two composite samples. So I would go and create another composite sample, and if I click on that second one, straight away MineMarket helps me to show that this sample can only be applied to the unassigned loading transactions, of which it was only the one. Right, so we go there, we put in the values. So let's say the it's 3.07%, and maybe the iron was 62.4. And that's it. That's how simple it is. What we can also do is we can then go over, we can either enter the sample values here at this point, or we can use the normal process of going to the Sample Explorer, finding the sample within the date range, and then allocating the quality, entering the quality. The next thing is we want to go and look is we're going to go and do a lot sample. So the first thing is I have to do is I have to go and create a lot sample regime, and MineMarket allocates a number which I can change. It defaults to today's date. I have to go and pick a sample template because that has the details of the result type and all the analytes that are going to be displayed. And then I'll go and specify and say every 10,000 tons just to follow our example. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to disable the auto calculation, uncheck that, so it means that samples will be calculated automatically. So I've done it, I've got the sample value, there are my loading transactions. As soon as I click and select any of the sample, the loading transactions, MineMarket will automatically create those loading lot samples there for me. So there you can see, so there we've got, for that first one to get to 23,123, I've got two samples of 10,000 each, and then the third sample would be for the balance. If I check the next loading transaction or the next hold, I can see there I've got those two, the 3,000 and the 6,000 add up to give me the 10,000 for the third sample. Then I've got 10,000, and here I've got a balance left over in that hold for 7,900. And it's exactly the same principle applies. I can at any point here go and enter into the actual quality values. And then of course I can save it. And that's how simple it is to do composite samples and lot samples within MineMarket.